from excessive mourning and weeping.
I felt, okay, this is the end. We are finished. I thought we wouldn't be able to carry on without Kim Il-sung.
The new leader of North Korea, Kim Iyong Yeil, lacks his father's charismatic command. Many predict that his government will soon collapse, but he is determined to retain power at any cost.
This is a man for whom regime survival is fundamental. And so he will do what he needs to do to stay in power in terms of the control over his people, the lack of human rights, and some of those things are quite horrific.
또 하나는 이제 국가안전보위부의 보위부 체계를
The national security system has been strengthened under Kim Jong-il.
계속 확장시키고
The political surveillance expanded.
옛날에는 좀 눈치범에 잡아갔지만
In the past, people were taken away, imprisoned with discretion. But now, they just don't care. They openly pick up people and then put them in prison, and they disappear without leaving a trace.
Many disappear into a system of prison camps, hidden between the mountains near the northern border. The only known photographs of the prisons themselves are satellite pictures. These sketches were drawn by former prison guard An Myung-cha.
I was a prison guard for 8 years, and I saw brutal stuff. Think of Auschwitz during World War II. In Auschwitz, they specialized in killing people fast. In North Korea, they kill them as slowly as possible. They told me that the inmates were political criminals and disloyal, so if they attempted to escape, we could shoot them to death.
In 1994, An learns that his father has been overheard criticizing Kim Il-sung. He knows he will have to escape North Korea or face dire consequences.
I had done nothing wrong. My father was branded as a traitor, and then he was killed. My mother was also accused of being a traitor and put in prison. My brother was killed too. So I had to escape somehow, even if that meant death.
The Duman River marks the border between North Korea and China. It is patrolled by North Korean agents, who often shoot to kill people trying to escape. After several attempts, An makes it safely to the other side. Others are not so fortunate. Despite the risks, by the mid-90s, an increasing number of people attempt to flee North Korea, not only because of the growing repression, but primarily because of the country's ever-deepening economic crisis.
They're in economic trouble, partly because they don't run their economy very well. But by the mid-90s, you then have a series of natural disasters, floods, etc., that lead to serious famine.
But these tragic conditions do not deter Kim from extravagant spending on his vast military forces.
He starves his people at the expense of providing for his military. 30 to 50% of the North Korean gross domestic product goes to the military.
In 1998, North Korea launched a rocket over Japan. It created a huge outcry, not only because it went over Japan, but because, unbeknownst to our analysts in advance, it turned out to be a 3-stage rocket. If that 3-stage rocket had been successful, which it was not, it fell into the sea, it very soon could have reached the continental United States.
The White House is stunned. The hope for a peaceful progression in relations has collapsed on both sides.
When North Korea made its nuclear freeze agreement with the U.S. in 1994, we got up front what we wanted. They stopped their nuclear program. It could have made 30 nuclear weapons a year in a very short time if it had not been stopped. So they felt they'd given up quite a lot. They got promises. After this agreement was concluded in 1994, the Republicans take over Congress. Clinton faces real opposition to this agreement he's just concluded. You softy, you've just given away the store to North Korea. So Clinton just didn't carry out most of this agreement. And many people in the Clinton administration thought, well, North Korea will collapse anyway. We don't have to carry it out. In the meanwhile, the military men in North Korea are going to Kim Iyong Yeil and saying, you sucker, you've been conned.
When Kim launches his long-range missile, Clinton is compelled to rethink U.S. policy towards North Korea. Following South Korea's lead of dialogue with the North, in October 2000, the president sends his Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, to Pyongyang for direct talks with Kim Jong-il.
I went having been briefed on what kind of a weirdo he was from our own people. He was portrayed as reclusive-like, with many girlfriends and watching porno movies, and basically a very weird kind of person that you had no idea what he was going to be like.
So, do you spend the pleasant time there?
He was actually quite charming. While I knew all the terrible things that he had done, I could at least make the distinction that he wasn't crazy. He was very, very well prepared, responded without notes, was not only respectful, but also interested in what I had to say.
The talks with Secretary Albright lead to a remarkable breakthrough.
Kim Jong-il puts his missile program on the table. He offers to end all exports of ballistic missiles. He offers to freeze the production, deployment, and testing of all ballistic missiles with a range of 300 miles or more.
This was extraordinary. It was indeed a moment of great hope. There was a possibility Kim Jong-il was finally going to enter the community of nations, perhaps hesitantly, but ultimately to really create the final peace and stability that might replace the armistice of 50 years that had been put in place at the end of the Korean War.
It was a hopeful set of cards that we left on the table. I think it was a big surprise to everybody when the Bush administration decided not to pick up that hand of cards.
The newly elected President Bush has grave concerns that Kim Jong-il cannot be trusted.
North Korea is a regime arming with missiles and weapons of mass destruction. States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil.
Bush's strong words are met by an increasingly defiant Kim Jong-il. North Korea's seeming determination to become a nuclear power will lead to an ever-escalating confrontation with the United States. Fearing that he too will be targeted by precision-guided missiles, like those used against Saddam Hussein, Kim Jong-il goes into hiding for 50 days, shortly before the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Kim's disappearance also coincides with the annual U.S.-South Korean joint military exercises. For more than 50 years, the U.S. military has maintained a commitment to protect the South at a cost of more than $2 billion per year. 37,000 American troops are still in place and ready for combat.
If I were North Koreans, I would worry too. We know today the Americans have a 5-stage attack plan on North Korea.
They are scared of us. They've been scared of us throughout the Cold War. And now, during the Bush period, they've become really scared again.
People say, well, are you willing to talk to North Korea? Of course we are. But what this nation won't do is be blackmailed.
President Bush has stated that any direct talks prior to North Korea's halting of its nuclear program are blackmail, the rewarding of bad behavior.
If that remains the U.S. posture, I think we're headed for a train wreck. I think it will be very difficult to prevent North Korea from going ahead with a nuclear